I don't even know if this would be a question that can be answered. Maybe it can, but like the plant-based crowd will say saturated fat's going to destroy you. Cholesterol is going to kill you. But then the meat-based side will say, hey, no, saturated fat is really good for you. It's that unsaturated stuff that's going to get you. And I welcome cholesterol because I want high test levels and it's okay, that sort of thing. How is it that there is such a crazy contrast between both camps when it comes to cholesterol and unsaturated, saturated fat?
Yeah, so it is purely from the muddied literature, and the scientific literature is very divergent in this. But the reason is that a lot of the original studies showing, or at least claiming, that saturated fat and cholesterol cause a problem was all industry research. It was all funded by the sugar companies, and actually they didn't disclose that. They didn't disclose their sources and their funding, which is not ethical or legal, and but they did it. And so people like Ansel Keys were paid off by the sugar companies. He put out the Seven Nations study, which is pretty well established now. He doctored the evidence. He cherry picked the certain ones that fit the graph and made it look like more cholesterol equaled more heart disease. And again, that's an associative study. It's epidemiology. You can only show association. You can never show causation, right, with an association study. So, and I talk to people sometimes. They're like, "Well, no, it's such a strong all these correlative studies prove causation." Okay, so this is someone who's never studied statistics, because you can never prove causation from correlation. You cannot, by definition. So, but if you prove or show that there is no correlation, that proves there is no causation, right? Because if there's no association, obviously one's not causing the other. So his own studies took out a number of countries that had very high cholesterol and saturated fat intake and very low heart disease, and other ones that had very low saturated fat and cholesterol intake and very high heart disease, right? So it really showed a very different picture. So he doctored his own research, and because he was paid off, and was a bit of a crook. I don't really like. Some people will still say, "Well, don't throw the baby out with the bathwater." He actually did a lot of good research, and we should at least still accept that. And I'm like, I don't know. I mean, we thought that was good research too. We found out it was compromised. So what else was compromised? I don't think we can trust really anything that guy did. And then the UCSF, University of California, San Francisco Medical School, they published in the Journal of the American Medical Association in 2016, one of the top medical journals in the world, actual internal memos from the sugar companies back in like the 50s and 60s detailing how they paid off 3 Harvard professors to falsify data and publish fraudulent studies to make it appear as if cholesterol was causing heart disease, when actually there was a lot of studies actually showing a very strong association between sugar and heart disease, right? And one of those professors was named head of the USDA. And he was the one who authored and published the 1977 USDA declaration saying that cholesterol causes heart disease, saturated fat increases cholesterol, stop eating both. And that changed the world. And then after that, we're like, well, we know that cholesterol causes heart disease. We know that saturated fat increases cholesterol. Therefore, they're bad. And then you started looking at things, well, how can this reduce cholesterol? Because we know reducing cholesterol is good, right? So all you have to do is look at, does it reduce cholesterol? But then some bright spot said, well, what is it actually doing? You're reducing cholesterol, but is that actually good? Is that actually coming out with the outcomes that you want? So there are studies showing that when you replace saturated fat with linoleic acid, that yes, that will reduce your LDL cholesterol and cardiac deaths go up, right? So that's not really helpful, right? Because the point is not to fight cholesterol. The point was to fight heart disease. And we found that that intervention did reduce cholesterol, but actually increased heart disease. And there have been a number of studies, really in the last decade, with tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of people showing that higher LDL cholesterol is actually beneficial. So people over the age of 65 with higher levels of LDL cholesterol live longer independently, right? So they're not going to nursing homes, they're not getting dementia. It's protective against Alzheimer's, protective against Parkinson's and other forms of dementia.
Higher LDL cholesterol.
Yeah, it's protective. Yeah. Your brain's made out of cholesterol. Yeah. Your brain's made out of fat. 70% of the solid matter in your brain is fat. 20% of that is DHA, EPA. That only comes from animal sources. You can't get those from plants. We make it, but not much, right? You need more of it. That cholesterol, your axons, which is like the fiber optic wires coming down from your neurons connect with the rest of your body. Those are insulated like any sort of wires would be, and with what's called a myelin sheath, and that helps the conductivity that makes the signal go faster. So you get demyelination. You get demyelinating diseases like multiple sclerosis, and that it manifests with multiple neurological problems. That just comes from damaging that myelin sheath. Well, that myelin sheath is made out of fat and cholesterol, right? You need all these things. These things are very important. In fact, just being on a ketogenic diet is very beneficial too, because the ketones can cross the blood-brain barrier and then reconstitute into fats. And that actually helps build the physical structures and maintain the physical structures of the brain. So when we take a deeper look into this, historically, a lot of these studies were now known to be fraudulent and compromised. They were bought and paid for by the sugar companies. That was not disclosed. We even have their contracts. We know what these Harvard professors were paid. They were paid $6,500. It's equivalent about $50,000 now. That's it. That's what their souls were worth. They bought a Camry, right? So they got that, and it just absolutely destroyed the health of the world. And we know since that declaration, people have gotten a lot worse. The obesity rate after World War II was 6%, and in 1980 it was 8%. Now it's like over 24%, something like that. 70% of people are overweight or obese in America. UK was 6%. Now it's like closer to 30%. So, we've tripled, quadrupled our obesity rates, right? And all the other chronic diseases have gone along with that.
Power Project family, your normal shoes are making you weak. This is why you partner with Vivo Barefoot Shoes, because they have a wide toe box, they're flat, and they're flexible. So with every single step you're taking, if you're taking a 10-minute walk outside, or when you're working out in the gym, your feet are able to do what they're supposed to do in this shoe. They have tons of options for hiking, running, training in the gym, chilling and relaxing, casual shoes for if you're out on a date. You need to check them out. And Andrew, how can they get it?
Yes, that's over at vivobarefoot.com/powerproject, and you guys will receive 15% off your order automatically. Again, vivobarefoot.com/powerproject. Links to them down in the description, as well as the podcast show notes.
There's another one. I learned about the Framingham study, major study, sort of a hallmark, landmark case study in heart disease and cholesterol. Followed these people in Framingham, Massachusetts, for I think it was like 30 years. Looked at all these different sorts of markers and looked at what sort of problems they were getting and see what sort of associations they could draw. And I was taught in medical school that this showed that the more cholesterol that you had, total cholesterol, LDL cholesterol you had, the higher your heart disease rates were. It was this direct correlation. Okay, again, correlation, not causation. Mm-hmm. The problem with that is what's taught to, like I said, you get these things you just get repeat, and they just end up being, everyone knows that. But you look back to the source and you find that okay, what's that based on? So that was based on the AHA, their interpretation of the Framingham study, not the Framingham study itself. So the American Heart Association actually published 2 years after the Framingham study that more cholesterol equaled more heart disease. What the Framingham study actually showed was that more cholesterol, less heart disease. That's what they found. So they completely misreported the actual findings of the Framingham study. So this all goes back to this fraud that was perpetrated first onto the American public and then later onto the world, because we were obviously very influential in other policies around the world. Like we made that declaration in 1977. UK followed suit in 1983. And the same results happened to them as happened to us. And then Australia and the rest of the world have all been taking these
and these are ways just to increase selling processed foods, most likely, and monocrop farming and whatever else you want to throw into the mix.
That's it, because this is all industry research that we didn't know. So the only thing you can tell from industry research is that whatever the industry is funding, they will that study will support that that industry, that product. And in fact, studies that come out that industry supports that don't support their product, they don't get published, right? So they might find this and go like, "Oop, that didn't show what we wanted to show. We'll just tuck this under the rug." I actually spoke with a doctor down in Perth, Australia, where I live now, and he was involved in research for probiotics. And he didn't tell me the name of the company or anything like that, but so it was a major probiotic company, and they had a small study with sort of like 6 people, which is nothing, showing that there was some benefit to these probiotics, and that's to say, oh, this is clinically proven to show benefit. 6 people. And so they wanted a bigger study just because they believed in their product, and that's fair enough. So they say, okay, great, let's do this bigger study, and let's really get some hard evidence to show that our product's great. So they did this bigger study. It was run in Perth, Australia, and they found that actually it wasn't that good. It actually maybe was detrimental, and so they were getting ready to publish it, and they got letters from the lawyers saying that, like, you publish that thing, we'll sue you. And so you can't publish it. So they weren't allowed to publish their results, and because it was funded by them. And so the abstract is still available. That's available, and people can read the abstract, but the full study itself is not allowed to be published. And so that's what happens with industry research. So a lot of this stuff is saying that cholesterol causes heart disease, at least the foundational studies that everyone's based everything off of afterwards, subsequently, was industry research. A lot of these things. There were actually randomized controlled trials back in that era as well, because this was hotly debated. You go back into literature and read the studies and the papers and the position papers. In the Journal of American Medical Association, 1956, there was a position that came out that I read that said, it's basically accepted now that cholesterol is a driving factor in heart disease. But this is really based on really bad evidence. These studies that people talk about, they're flawed for all these different reasons. They just went through for like 12 pages just excoriating all of the so-called evidence that cholesterol causes heart disease. So this was hotly debated. And all the way through the 70s, and then 1977, that declaration came out, and it was just like, it was appealing to authorities. Well, teacher said so no, you're wrong. And there was no argument after that. And it actually ruined the reputations and careers of all these people, like Dr. Yudkin in the UK. There was just like, no, it's sugar. Sugars, there's a direct correlation. In every country, when refined sugar consumption goes up, heart disease tracks, like 20 years after that, almost perfectly. Same with seed oils. Seed oils track really well with heart disease as well. Red meat does not. Animal fats do not. Saturated fat do not. They actually have an inverse relationship. If you look through the 20th century, as animal fat, saturated fat is going down, heart disease is going up. And so not the same with seed oils and sugar.
Yeah. Power Project family, we appreciate you checking out this clip. Check out another one. Just go check out another one. Or comment down below and let us know what you liked about this one. But we love you guys, and we're going to keep bringing you the heat. So comment, subscribe, and all that good stuff, okay? Peace.